So you're all very welcome to our webinar tonight, and I hope you've come armed with questions for the wonderful Kate Harris, who is our guest tonight. So I'm sure most of you know that Kate is one of the founders of the LGB Alliance. And I'm just going to say a little bit about who we are. The Green Women's Declaration was set up in 2023, which advocates for kind of eco-feminist sex-based rights in the Green Party. Okay, so I'm going to pass you over to Jude English now. Jude is one of the directors of Green Women's Declaration. She was a councillor and a stalwart Green Party member until she too fell under the hammer, let's say, of the draconian disciplinary system.
Thanks a lot, Emma. Thanks. And really, really warm welcome to you, Kate. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
As Emma says, I was for many years, nearly 20 years, a member of the Green Party, and fell under the hammer of talking too much actually about being a lesbian. I wrote a little piece on the Green Women's Declaration called A Lesbian Perspective, where I talked about the difficulties for young women of becoming a lesbian in the modern world and the problems with medicalisation and all that stuff, which I'm sure we'll get onto, Kate, at some point, because that's something I know you're very concerned about, and so am I. So speaking about CAS, speaking about puberty blockers, speaking about being a lesbian, and saying things like a man can never be a lesbian was part of the list of the crimes for which I was expelled from the party. And it's really painful. I have to say that was a very painful thing, still is very painful to me, that the party cannot accept that lesbian and gay rights, lesbian, gay and bisexual rights are an integral part of a political party's responsibilities and in a liberal, secular society. And I think one of the things I'd like to talk to you about at some point is also about this idea of what a liberal, secular political party looks like in this country and whether the Green Party is anywhere near it. So those might be a few, little pointers. Do you want to say anything about yourself, Kate, before we start, just to let people know who you are?
Yes, I'm one of the two co-founders of LGB Alliance. Bev Jackson and I have both been campaigning for gay and lesbian rights since the 1970s. We were introduced to each other in 2019. I'd been trying to get something off the ground for a few years to fight back against Stonewall because I'd devoted an awful lot of my time to supporting Stonewall in the days when it was sane and when it was doing useful, good work, performing properly as a lobby group in a liberal democracy. And from about 2015 onwards, when Ruth Hunt became chief exec, I made it my mission to try to tell the world what was going on under the thumb of no debate at the time. And I tried for several years to engage Ruth Hunt and Jan Gooding and various trustees at Stonewall, because I knew them all because I'd been working with them.
Yeah.
And we engaged ex-trustees to try to approach them. We kept hitting a brick wall. And so after a couple of years, as I say, I was 2 or 3 years of getting nowhere, I was introduced to Bev, and she'd been writing to Stonewall independently. She lives in Amsterdam, and she'd been writing to them saying, look, I was involved with gay liberation, the first meeting of gay liberation in the United Kingdom, which was at LSE. Bev was the only woman in a meeting of 20. 19 gay men, 1 lesbian. So she had a long history as well, and she was trying to get Ruth Hunt to talk. Anyway, we were introduced and we said, right, we've got to do something. And by a series of lucky coincidences, we ended up being able to use the meeting room at Conway Hall on the 22nd of October 2019 for our top secret launch meeting. We spent about 6 months on the phone ringing around anybody that we thought might be interested in coming to a meeting to discuss the launch of a new organisation which didn't have a name. We planned to launch the organisation in January 2020, but what happened was that we held our secret meeting. We invited 70 people secretly. 70 people secretly turned up and all bumped into their best friends and said, "Oh, didn't know you were coming," because everybody did keep quiet, because those are the days when we were so frightened of meetings being bust up. So we didn't have a name, but we had a huge energy. It was a huge coming together of the gays and the lesbians and the bisexuals. We did actually have some trans people at the meeting. We did actually have some straight people. It was a variety, but mainly lesbians and gays, and the energy of the freedom of being able to talk for the first time in years about what we've been banned from speaking about. So we did lots of work in that meeting. We sent our first letter to the Equality and Human Rights Commission, telling them that they needed to change their policies, change their code of practice, do this, that, and the other. We've been writing to them ever since. But we also found that we were launched because Alison Bailey that night on her way home put a tweet out saying to the world, LGB Alliance is here. This is an end to I'm paraphrasing, an end to gender madness. And that tweet went viral. And that's when we found ourselves completely swamped with 50% tweets telling us we were hateful Nazis and 50% saying, "Thank God, please can we have an LGB Alliance in country after country after country after country." So that was our birth, and it was all about rebuilding the lesbian and gay community and about moving forward and speaking to each other, dialogue, freedom of speech, biological reality, stop medicalizing kids, and for goodness sake, dump Stonewall law and start following the law of the land.
Brilliant. Yes. I mean, I have to say, when it happened, it was a huge relief for me and lots of my friends. And I just want to say thank you for all the work you've done. I mean, in a short amount of time, there has been. We're going to try and be positive in this conversation, aren't we? Because it's easy to kind of go down that avenue of how awful things have been, and they have been awful. But I think we're going to try and keep quite positive and think about all the things that are going well. So there has been a lot of successes in the last few years, the last 5 to 6 years, hasn't there? From that kind of very small beginning, and your organisation with others, of course, has been pivotal in really moving the Overton window on a lot of this stuff. And the big thing that's happened in the last year, of course, was the Supreme Court judgment. Now, I shouldn't need to have to say this in 2025, should I? I'm sure I don't need to say it to our audience, but you know, lesbians are same-sex attracted women, and they should be allowed to organise themselves and have events and do things without men in the room. That's really what the Supreme Court judgment said, isn't it? In part of what was a bigger judgment, but it was a very, very important thing to happen. Do you want to just say a few words about how monumental that's been, and explain maybe what good you think's come out of it?
Yeah. We intervened in support of For Women Scotland up in Scotland, first of all, before it ever came to the Supreme Court. We intervened because we knew. Now, let me try and describe this. We know that lesbians are at the pointy end of the effect of gender identity ideology. So if you are a woman or a girl, gender identity ideology says that you have to suspend disbelief, you have to call a man a man, a woman, you have to let them into your sports, your changing rooms, your hospitals, everywhere, that you have no rights at all, at all. But if you're a lesbian, there's an additional layer which says, in addition, you've got to have sex with these men. And that was the pointy end that we wanted to add to the case that For Women Scotland was bringing. For Women Scotland was bringing the hugely important case that there are only two sexes and that women will not be reduced to second-class citizens. But we wanted to say, for lesbians, please understand this. This is very, 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 very clear. Men who say they are women want to also be accepted as lesbians. And when you point that out, or when a barrister in a court analyzes that with scalpel-like precision, it's a joy to behold. And if anybody hasn't watched the Supreme Court ruling or hearing, the actual days of the evidence, which were, gosh, when were they? The judgment was in April, wasn't it? And I think the hearing was several months before. It's on YouTube, and I really recommend you watch the bit where they talk about the lesbians, because counsel for the Scottish government was squirming as she was trying to explain to the 5 Supreme Court judges that a man with a GRC would, by nature of that, become a lesbian. And you just see the look on their faces. And you know, we are always very boastful and very over the top and very ridiculous. And so we would say, it was the lesers what won it. And of course, Marion Calder and Trina and Susan Smith and Magdalene Burns, God bless her, would laugh. But it brings home the utter insanity and cruelty of gender identity ideology once you introduce the fact that men with penises must be accepted as lesbians.
Yeah. Yes. It's such a nonsense that it seems strange, especially when, you know, we're talking in settings like this where most people, I assume, who are watching would agree, and you know, we know that most people in the general population agree. It's such a strange situation to think that we had to go to law, had to go to court to sort this out. And of course, inside the Green Party, there is a kind of upper echelon of people who refuse to acknowledge the judgments happened, refuse to engage with the changes to our own internal democracy happen, and refuse to engage with kind of disciplinary issues. I mean, it's going to have to stop in the next few years because they're trying to be a grown-up party now, and you know, got huge membership and things are changing. So it's quite interesting. But what I wanted to ask you, we're going with a bit of a hard question now. I think let's see how we go.
Yeah.
I know that you're not a member of the Green Party, but you've been having a nose round and are interested. And I spoke to you last week and said, one of the things I think is quite interesting in the context of what you've described and the law is that the Green Party now has 3 leaders who all profess to be of a religious denomination. Now, lesbians inside religious, particularly fundamental religious organizations, it's never been easy. I was brought up a Christian. My school, there's, you know, that it was not a happy thing. Yeah. So we've got a Jewish leader, a woman who says she was brought up as a Christian, and we have a Muslim leader. None of those religions are at all lesbian friendly, I would say. And yet the party and society in general seems to think that things can bobble along. I just wondered if you had any thoughts about how that can carry on inside a political party when, with no debate and lesbians and the law and everything, where do you see that going?
Well, it ends in disaster. I think it is utterly incredible to me that not just the Greens, I mean, you could say that the Greens are at the sharp end of all of this, but if you look at the Labour Party and certainly the Lib Dems, you know, the danger that I think possibly the leaders of the parties, apart from the Greens, are beginning to get it. But Bridget Phillipson was a bit worrying the other day. But we have something called the rule of law. And without the rule of law and freedom of speech, we have no liberal democracy. And although we're being very upbeat and very positive, I'm really quite surprised that what happened to Nicola Sturgeon seems to be getting a little bit forgotten, because it was such a clear illustration of go woke, go broke. And the destruction of any integrity or credibility for the SNP, who stumble from one crisis to the next. I would have expected Labour to be less awful than they are being at the moment. I would have expected them to look at what happened in Scotland and just to say to the troops, look, the law is the law. But instead of that, we see them flailing about, potentially dumping the EHRC code of practice, potentially, going to some ridiculous impact assessment review, which is completely unnecessary, and we all know that. So the answer to your question is, where does it go? Well, we see what's happening with various religions around the world, and luckily, most of us can live our lives quite happily without getting deeply involved in any particular religion. If you are a lesbian and you're born into a religion that says that you deserve to die, you're probably wanting to leave, even though it probably says, well, if you leave, you're going to die as well. So, God help people who are born, women, lesbians who are born into religions of that nature, and in particular, obviously, I'm thinking of Islamic countries. But there are many countries and political parties where homosexuality is illegal, outlawed, looked down on. I don't have any sort of brilliant answers about either religion or politics, other than to say that part of being a human being is speaking the truth. And as long as we continue to speak the fundamental truth about there are two sexes, sex cannot be changed, homosexuality exists, as long as we keep on saying that and living that, we aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy for us to say in this country because we're not getting. I mean, you're having a really tough time. You're being thrown out of your party, which is utterly appalling. You're not being put in prison yet.
No.
You're not
No.
being thrown off buildings yet.
No.
But your leadership need to understand that that's the direction of travel. Because once you stop people talking in the way that the Green Party is preventing you from speaking, where does it go? And this is something we've always said at LGB Alliance. We will talk to anybody. If you don't talk, where do you go? You actually end up with the only alternative, which is violence. And we are absolutely against violence. So we have to talk. So very long roundabout answer, but I think the parties will fail. We're going through this mad phase with the Greens at the moment, absolutely crackers. We're going through this mad phase of just thinking that, whack-a-mole, chuck Emma out, chuck Shahar out, chuck you out, chuck as many people as they can. But people are going to keep popping up and saying it.
Yeah.
Or they're going to end up in a party with, just gay men telling everybody what to do and everybody nodding. It's not a creative place to be.
It's a funny old thing because there are a lot of gay men at the top of the Green Party. Obviously, the leader's gay man, the deputy chief executive officer is, and lots of people in senior positions. And it's quite worrying to see the lack of understanding of female issues and women's rights, actually. And one's only got to hope that in the next few years, women are allowed to speak more, that the Women's Declaration is allowed to spend more of a kind of policy-making position inside the party, and we can have some discussions. But at the moment, no debate is definitely still there.
That's a dead end.
Yeah.
It's a dead end, and somebody somewhere in the Green Party must be thinking to themselves, as I think you said earlier, or Emma, that they're going to go bankrupt.
Well, it's definitely going to cost a lot of money to keep digging the same hole. So let's hope that, sooner or later they're going to work out that digging the holes is not the best thing to do. And of course, let's be honest, that most people in this webinar, people like me who've been a member of the Green Party for a long time, wish the Green Party well. We want the planet to be saved. We want sustainable issues, and we want common sense and freedom of speech. So that's on and up. I'm hoping that people will watch this and understand that we need to have debate. on the matter of debate, then let's move on to the universities then. So I went to university as a young woman and it was jolly good. I played on the women's football team. I found out I was a lesbian and I had a lot of girlfriends. Now, that was the youth that I had. Yeah. I drank a lot of beer and there was nobody telling me that somehow, because I was quite a butch young thing playing football and I had a girlfriend, that somehow I was a man. It just did not happen. And I was living in Brighton. It's funny, isn't it? It didn't happen. Now, the problem, of course, is that now you go to university. Apparently, you do those things. The most likely thing is that somehow you're a bloke. Well, not at the University of Cambridge, it seems. They've just started the University of Cambridge Women's Society, haven't they? So I'm very pleased those young women have done that. And I saw that Nick Wallace,
Yeah.
today said some very good things on his Twitter about that. But he also circled around and said, you know, a lot of young women at university are being, you know, I'm non-binary, I'm a they, them, I'm gonna, you know, take some medicalization pathways. We had in the Green Party a young woman who tried to become a leader, who went down that pathway. I don't think it was a good advert for the young people inside the party, and I think I wrote about that at one point, which probably upset people. What do you think about the young women at University of Cambridge then? And do you think that's the beginning of a big change in universities, where we're going to see some of this nonsense disappear as well?
Yeah, I mean, it is really it is so encouraging and so appalling to see the Labour Society coming out and, you know, absolutely denouncing them for
Oh, did they? I missed that bit today.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know, this is the Labour Society. It carries it should know better. But I'm sure, you know, they've been denounced by, I think, all sorts of common rooms and feminist societies. Feminism is not real if it doesn't include men. You know, the mind boggles, but we are very positive. We are going to really commend the kids that are standing up to it. I mean, I was reading something awful about was it Newnham yesterday?
Yes, it is Newnham that I think they've started it in.
That is it, or is it Girton? Somebody said they're including trans
Yes, it is
identified
Newnham.
men, but and that apparently lesbians turn up there, you know, to start the term, and you know, by half term they're non-binary, and the following term they're trans, and this is shows the moral vacuum in our university leadership. I'm presuming you were at Sussex, were you?
It was, yes.
Yeah. So was I. So was Ben Bradshaw. So was Kemi Badenoch. So was Kathleen Stock.
Yeah.
Well, as a teacher. But yeah, I mean, I think there is a disgraceful lack of leadership, apart from obviously Professor Jo Phoenix and her brilliant work at the Open University. But you know, academics have got to Alice Sullivan. I mean, of course there are. I shouldn't say that.
There are some.
There are
Lone
some.
voices.
Yeah, but the majority. I mean, you know, the Sasha Roseneal at Sussex on 360,000 a year is an utter disgrace to lesbians. She's you know promoting gender identity ideology. They have a medical school. God knows what they're teaching the medical students there. So yes, we have a massive problem in the universities. Being very positive, we do know lots of them are fighting back. How do we know that? Because we have a chief executive officer called Kate Barker at LGB Alliance, who's always busy building the community, and the latest community building of homosexuals and bisexuals is for young people.
Yes,
And
yes.
apparently this little group is booming. And these are kids at university who are pissed off and who are saying, no, actually, we are going to be lesbians and gays and bisexuals, and we're not going to be putting binders on or taking estrogen, or, you know, these are kids who are the future. And you have to hope that, you know, eventually there's going to be such a reaction to how utterly ridiculous it is. But it's difficult. You know, we have the BBC churning out nonsense. We have universities. We have publishers. It's a battle. But I have to believe that eventually the university leadership will start to get a grip and
Yeah.
look at the incompatibility of banning freedom of speech and talking rubbish, which is what lots of them are doing at universities across the country.
That's really it's really good to hear that that you think there may be a sea change, and one would hope, wouldn't one? If we
Yeah.
think about certainly in the Green Party, I'd say the last 10 years have been absolutely ground zero for nonsense, and
Mm.
maybe that's a lost decade of young women, particularly, who have been either, you know, made to keep very quiet about their sexuality or pretend
Mm.
that they're things that they're not. So
Yeah.
let's hope that that's going to change. I mean, I think Sharad used to joke, well, when we first met years ago, that, you know, when the Green Party manages to change its tune on this, it will be a sign that the world in general has changed. So I do think we are at the pointy end in this party, and when you see change happen, it will mean that in the outside world it's happening even more so. You've got this new organisation inside, haven't you? So you're talking about the so that's LGB Alliance for Young People, is it? And there's a helpline, isn't there, as well?
Well, there's a helpline. Yeah, that's just an online messaging service. That's very different.
All right, but it does exist, and it didn't exist a few years ago.
Yeah. It was one of the first things we wanted to do because lots of us grew up with, Lesbian Line and Gay Switchboard, and every town basically had somewhere you could phone, even if it was to say where's the nearest gay bar, which is what a lot of people use them
Yes.
for. Now we have LGBTQIA plus lines all over the place, and we wanted to have at least one place where you could go, and if you say I'm worried, I think I might be gay or I might be a lesbian or whatever, then there is somewhere neutral that you can go. And this is not conversations. This is online. It's
Okay, yeah.
very high tech, very advanced safeguarding checks. People were concerned that we might be falling into some sort of traps with that, but it's everything is I think it's the Samaritan's technology that we use, so everything
Okay.
is recorded.
But that
Yes,
that
and
that
so
does
on.
exist. And of course we're starting to see, aren't we, as well? So, and I think that Lesbian Gay Alliance was the first to start this, and now we're seeing lots of other organizations start
Yes.
to pop up. So the whole QTI amalgamation is still very big, and there's a lot of money in there, and we can talk why that is, I think, in a moment. But we're
Mm.
starting to see some other organisations pop up, aren't we? There's organisations like Lesbian Persistence in Scotland, and Not All Gays in Ireland. Very,
Yeah.
very go get a young woman in charge of that called an egg, isn't there?
And
Who's
they
a young
and
woman in perhaps late 20s who's very articulate. She's a lawyer. It's so great to see some of these organizations popping up. What do you think is missing from the ecosystem at the moment then? Is there a kind of specific organization for young people or young lesbians and young gays that
well,
that you could you want to see happen in the next few years, in case there's anyone watching who thinks that they might want to, start
well,
something
just
up?
just before I respond to that, an egg was actually at the United Nations recently.
Oh gosh,
Yeah,
yes.
speaking about surrogacy, good for her. We, as LGB Alliance, when we began, we decided to take a very narrow view of the topics that we were going to cover, given we knew we were going to be, trying to survive more than anything. So prostitution and surrogacy, which we all feel strongly about, we do
Yeah.
not campaign on simply because we wanted to narrow our remit. But Aneg did brilliantly at the United Nations. Not All Gays is part of LGB International. In September, we
Oh
will
yeah.
be thrilled to launch our Declaration of Independence. And if anyone hasn't seen it, there's a really fabulous video. LGB International has its own Twitter account. And it starts with a young woman in Brazil. And it goes, through so many different countries, from Taiwan to Australia to France to Switzerland, And you'll see if you watch that video, Jude, the vast majority of people speaking on it, because what we did was we asked each country just to do a couple of minutes video about why they wanted to declare independence. And then the very last speaker is moi. And I am
Really good.
about 3 times, at least 3 times the age of all of the other people on the video. So I'm hoping that I'd be delighted if other groups start up of any kind for gays, lesbians, bisexual, whatever they want, to be social, to do what they want. Music, art we desperately need that. But I would also encourage them to be part of LGB Alliance, not because I'm in a mad power grab, but because the more we can speak with a single voice on the issues that matter to us, the better. So, we're faced with this, as you said, a hugely wealthy monolith of LGBTQIA plus organizations. So we are a sort of minnow fighting a whale. But because we speak sensibly and they speak indefensible gobbledygook, we are making enormous steps forward. So I would say to anybody who knows any young lesbians and gays and bisexuals who want to get involved, please contact LGB Alliance and or set up your own groups. We also do something now which is what's on. So it is a bit like the old gay switchboard, lesbian helpline, whatever. We send out a newsletter of all kinds of events, not just LGB Alliance events. So if you've got a lesbian event going on that you want us to publicize, it will go out in our it's just what's on this week, what's on this month.
No, fantastic. I mean, it's shocking for me to have to think this, but I couldn't attend Green Party conference this year because I was not a member, not allowed in through the door, and so couldn't go to any of the QTI meetings.
Incredible.
It is, but it's hopeful to see inside Labour, for example, that there's a new LGB group that set itself up. And I know there's one inside the Liberals. There's
Yes.
the fantastic Lesbian Greens, which is a small but fighting little group inside the Green Party. And the idea that we have to fight for space inside a political party or inside a conference to, have discos or parties and stuff is really weird. But it's interesting to me to think that with 150,000 members, not everybody inside this new, burgeoning Green Party will be taken in by the gender ideology, and that's a lot of people to start to turn the boat around. So I'm hopeful that, I'm very optimistic about the future. You've got to be, otherwise you'd just be crying yourself to sleep every night, wouldn't you? So
Yeah.
I'm hopeful we can turn the boat around, and it'd be great to think that at next year's conference, for example, LGB Alliance would have a stall, and that we've got our own lesbian Greens, meeting, and that maybe some people have been allowed back into the party and can start to talk about these things. So, would you consider trying to book a stall next year if we asked? I'd like to. I'm not putting you on the spot, but I think it would be. We do need to put a bit of pressure on them. So I'd like to think about that for the future.
Yeah, we have applied to Lib Dem, Labour, and Conservative Party conferences since 2020. We will now also apply for the Greens. I mean, I think because the next election is going to be so interesting, I think we should also apply to have a stand at reform.
Well, I tend to agree. Actually, I'm one of those people that thinks that you need to talk to everybody.
Yes.
So I think you can't just do it just to people. And on that note, I think that's great if you would. And let's move on to this as a new question then, I suppose. This next election, because we are a political party and we're interested in how things are going to work out. This next election in 2029 is being called the TikTok election, hasn't it? And young people who are 12 now, 12, 13, 14, 15, are going to be the target audience, because there'll be votes at 16. You know, Keir Starmer's done this, you know, groundbreaking thing to bring in votes at 16. It's always been Green Party, well, been Green Party policy for as long as I can remember, to bring down the voting age. Two things. What do you think about bringing the voting age down? And then the second one, the TikTok generation are very susceptible, I think, to political messaging and this sort of gender identity messaging. What do you think can be done in the next few years in that area to try and help young people to make some kind of different political decisions? That's quite a few things mixed in there, but there's two things. One is, what about votes at 16? Do you think it's a good thing? And second one, TikTok generation. How can we cope with this?
Yeah, I was just thinking when you said that, I think perhaps we shouldn't let people vote till they're 25.
Right. It seemed like
Only because I say that, Jude, because since I've been working with people like Sally Baxendale and finding about brain development and stuff that I never ever knew about, and how little it is developed until it is 25. And the only people who actually are clear about that are car rental companies, because they won't rent a car to anybody under 25. But to your point, seriously, should people at 16 be able to vote? I'm just, the reason that I'm so wary of it is that I think that the influence of TikTok and other apps that I don't even know about.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know about Snapchat, and I'm not terribly hot on all sorts of other apps that are used by kids. But the ability to influence, we've seen over and over again, is ginormous. So, but is it any worse at 16 than 18? I don't know. What is your argument for letting them vote at 16? I don't
think
much
I think the Green Party's argument was a kind of one about it's a liberal argument, I think, isn't it, that says that you know, if you can go in the army, if you can get married, if you can make all these decisions that are very life, you know, changing and whatever, that you should be allowed to vote. So I think it comes back to this fundamental thing that the Green Party is about, being a liberal and a libertarian party. So bringing the age down is a good thing. So I'm just a bit worried personally about the messaging, and so particularly because Green Party is so full of this idea of gender ideology, that all political parties become carrier waves for this sort of nonsense, apart from perhaps reform. But we'll see, won't we? There's a few years to play before it happens. I see that Emma's put a video on, which I think means
I have, Jude.
Question time.
It is question time. I've had a couple of questions come through to me. I've got this one that I was just sent through, which was about what's happening at the Tavistock. You know, staff often spoke about transing away the gays. Is this still happening, even though the Tavistock is closed? Is it still happening with private medicine? And if so, is there still a predominance of young women seeking to transition? Is that social contagion? The figures of young women seeking to transition was horrendously high. Is that still the case?
I haven't got any up-to-date figures that I can safely use to answer that question. Yes, it's happening. Yes, it's happening on the NHS. Yes, it's happening all over the world. We have a very active LGB Alliance in Taipei, which has become the center of surgical reassignment for Asia. We know in Australia, the Children's Hospital in Melbourne is still performing these operations. We know the same things happening in Canada and the US and in South America. So I can't answer the question in terms of giving numbers, but I would say that it is still a huge problem, and the fact that we actually perform phalloplasties on the NHS is so criminal, and the fact that the BBC still has not covered the scandal of the W-Path files, where we found out that the world's leading authority on what is called gender affirming care and is actually sterilisation, mutilation and ruining lives. The BBC still has not reported on the fact that all of this medicine is based on a series of lies, fantasies and speculation. So I'm sorry to whoever asked the question that I don't have the facts at my fingertips. I suspect that GenSpect or somebody like that might have it on their website, but it's so hard to get any data and figures about all of this.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think many of us would echo what you say about the BBC. We have a couple of hands up. I don't know. I would like to welcome Tim Delson, if you would like to ask your question.
Okay, yeah. Hello. Thanks for the interesting and sometimes very worrying talk. Immediately after the legal ruling in Scotland in April, the Good Law Project spoke up and said it was very confident of having this overturned because the ruling meant that people would have to, I think, disclose things about themselves, and therefore it was discriminatory. I wonder if any of you have any, greater knowledge of that response that they gave and where it might go.
It won't go anywhere, luckily. There's no basis at all. They keep quoting Article 8 and right to privacy, and it's a lot of hot air. So much of the Good Law Project is about raising millions of pounds for failed cases, and the legal advice we have from cases involved in the Supreme Court decision say this will go nowhere.
I think it's part of the kind of generalized misinformation campaign that's very big out there, and it's very good, and it kind of gets into the ether, doesn't it, and then gives this idea that maybe it's not true. It's reminiscent of the kind of the climate change stuff, isn't it, and the tobacco wars, that sort of thing, where you put out something that tries to discredit a legal argument or a health thing. So I think it's part of a very sophisticated kind of way of trying to stop people believing things.
And a way to make money.
Yeah. Yes, definitely a way to make money. I mean,
they raised £500,000 within weeks on the back of what you've just described, Tim.
Yeah.
And it's pure nonsense. There is no substance whatsoever. There is no legal basis for any appeal to the European Court of Human Rights.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks very much. I mean, I know they've done good work on the environmental front in some places, but yeah.
Well, certainly it's going to be November. They're going to go to court for the first time, aren't we? So we will certainly see. I predict, don't put your money on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say as well that when we had a webinar with Helen Joyce, she spoke about organisations that sometimes, if they were very, very pro-trans, if you kind of dug around, you could find someone in the organisation that would usually have a close relative who was trans or have a child who was trans. And I think if you look at the Good Law Project, you might well find that is the case.
Okay, but let's move on, Emma. So we've got Anna, who was here early, so I think she should get to ask a question.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Anna.
Okay. First of all, forgive me for my accent and my English, but yeah. I just wanted to ask, so I am 23, as you can see, and I'm like openly bisexual, like openly, right? And I don't get why, like, I've tried to join radical feminist or like LGB activism in both in Ireland, I live in Ireland and in Italy, right? And I don't really get why it's mostly like women or men who are like more than 45, 50, you know what I mean? Which I love older people, let's talking, you know, but I just don't get why there are no young people. And I would like to know what is your opinion on this, other than like fear of speaking out, obviously, like what other reason there might be for this distance between younger generation like Gen Z and millennial from radical feminism and LGBT activism?
I think you're right. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that the fear is being cancelled socially, losing your friends, and even losing your job. And that's why if you look at Bev Jackson and me, we were able to start LGB Alliance because we didn't have a job to lose
Okay.
or a reputation to lose. So it had to, you look at organizations that are starting up now. I think you'll see, Anna, if you look at the LGB International video,
Seen that, yeah.
all around the world, they're young. Now, somehow they're managing to start to speak out, but you can't do it on your own. You have to have at least a few friends around you, because social isolation is really damaging. And I think a lot of people are going along with this for fear of just being on their own. But I'm sure you can find some people in Ireland or Italy. I mean, certainly, as you mentioned, there's the Not All Gays group in Ireland,
Yeah.
and there's an Italian LGB Alliance somewhere. I don't know them in person, but
Okay,
You know,
thank you.
the other place, Anna, that I think's been really helpful to me actually is the Free Speech Union, and I know they've got a special offer on for students, and I know they run things for people. I think if you just want to meet people who want to talk about free speech as well and freedom of opinion, they're quite an interesting organisation. And though, and I think we will see more young people in the next few years. You know, it's very brave of young people to come out. I'm in awe of all the young people who are starting to say stuff. Connie Shaw at the Free Speech Union I met briefly last month, and she's a real inspiration. So I think, yeah, follow some people and there will be people in Ireland, and maybe we all need to try and make some more kind of opportunities for people to meet, don't we? I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I went to a music camp in the summer that was run for women, actually lesbians, and there was a few young people, so they're starting to come out of the woodwork. It must be really tough to be young and not believe this stuff in the modern world. So I do hope that you manage to find some people.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Very
I'm
well.
just sad as well, Anna. I mean, it might seem unbelievable, but gender identity is so new. You know, all this older people, we weren't taught this at school. It wasn't a thing. And once something is taught you in school or college, it's very hard to kind of combat that because you trust your teachers, you believe them. Okay, we've got a hand from Jill Raymond with a question. Jill, if you'd like to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, thanks, Emma. It's a question really for Kate, and it's not specifically a lesbian question, but there have been a couple of consultations that WDI have recently responded to as UK ponds in the bathing ponds, and an interest consultation on the new gender clinics. We've got the CEDAW review coming up. I wondered if you get a chance in your busy schedule to do LGB Alliance responses to some of these consultations that are going out.
Yes, we have we've done them from the beginning, and we have them posted on our website, that all the responses to consultations that have been done. I doubt whether we would have done the ponds one. I think some of us did it personally, but we tend to just stick to LGB issues and anything to do with medicalization of children and young people. But yes, if you want to check out what we're up to, I mean, I didn't mean that negatively, but the consultations should all be up on our website, and hopefully they'll be there, because I think it's terribly important that our voice is heard. And amazingly, we did one about football or something in 2020, and it was quoted in a paper a couple of years later. We'd forgotten all about it, but it's definitely worth doing it, because it is on the public record that there are dissenting voices. And we spent a lot of time particularly answering consultations in Scotland, where of course we know the madness is, well, was for a period of years even worse than here, and it still is in many ways, and also in Wales. So yes, the answer is yes, yes, yes. And we encourage everybody to answer these consultations, however irritating they are, because we have to make the world, the politicians, know that we don't all go along with this nonsense. It is a a temporary nightmare that will come to an end, and we will be the ones who are on record as having opposed it.
I think that's very good advice. You're right. There are so many of these consultations, but it is really important, just we've got to be in it to win it, as they say.
Exactly.
Okay, I've got a question online. I can see Lynn's got a hand up, but I'll just ask this one from Kathy Newnham beforehand. She said, could you ask Kate for advice on communicating this issue with lesbians who have spent the last 10 years trying to be as progressive, inclusive, and queer as possible, particularly older ones who, having proclaimed allyship, are not keen to backpedal? How do we win them back?
Oh, gosh.
I was going to say something rather I was just gonna say, take them out, get pissed, and tell them to pull themselves together. But that's not terribly helpful. It's really hard. It's really hard because we have women that we know are brainy. We know they know it's a lot of nonsense. We know they are living in a parallel universe, but we can't understand why. So to be perfectly honest, I don't do that anymore. I leave them to it. I'm afraid those people have left my life. They don't want to speak to me. And to be honest, I haven't got the breath for them. I really want to talk to people around the world who are in much, much, much more difficult straits than we are, and support growing groups. I mean, the group in Brazil is up against, they've got enormous battles. The government, the trans movement there are so violent and so strong and so active. I want to give my energy to people who are trying to fight back, people like Anna who want to find other young people. I don't want to give my energy to women, lesbians who should know better. I'm afraid my advice is say goodbye and move on.
Well, I think you can only do so much, and I have to say I think you're putting your energy in the right place. Okay, Lynn Alderson, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking about the Athena organization, which Faika Al-Nagashi has recently launched, and how much that goes on at an international level is kind of in very secretive groups that we know nothing about. All this stuff about WPATH has been exposed, but there's obviously all these networks at a European level that have tried very actively to influence government policy in a lot of different countries, and I think quite successfully, because we all seem to come up against the same agendas. And I wondered, to what extent, Kate, you're going to be working on that level? Will you be working with Athena? Is there something positive that's going to be happening around that level?
Yes, and that's why we formed LGB International, so that we have a global voice at the United Nations in particular. Good grief, how many fights did we have with Victor Madrigal-Borloz when he was the soggy special expert at the United Nations? How much time and effort did we put into writing to protect EHRC when Stonewall wanted them to be removed as the National Human Rights Organization for the United Kingdom? We're constantly aware of our international responsibilities. We've applied to the United Nations for ECOSOC status. I spent many happy hours completing the work to apply for that. I think the last time they communicated with me, they said that the applications have been put off for another year. I think next July 2026 they'll tell us. But we are constantly banging at that door because we know what happened. What happened was the Yogyakarta Principles were written and signed by a group of men and a few women who didn't give a single thought to women's rights. And the authors of the Yogyakarta Principles went forth and multiplied at UN and other multinational organizations around the world and the European Union. And you can actually trace the individuals concerned. What's the name of the Irish bloke? Was it O'Flaherty, who's just condemned our Supreme Court decision? He's a signatory. Somebody else whose name escapes me, who was head of the Human Rights Commission in New Zealand, another signatory who'd worked in Ireland to help them get self-ID through, who worked with Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland. I wish a PhD student would just take the names of those signatories and follow what they did post-signing the Yogyakarta Principles, because they embedded the idea that gender identity was more important than sex across all our international institutions while we were all asleep. And funnily enough, a lot of it comes back once again to gay men. I still don't understand why, but gay men have been instrumental in this across those multinational organizations. And following the Dentons playbook, they have put all of this into the statute book without anybody noticing, and into what FICA is fighting at EU level, that ludicrous LGBTQIA plus strategy at the EU for the next years. Terrifying document. So that was rather a long answer, but it is something that I feel very, very strongly about. We have to fight at global level, because it's a global problem that kids are being sterilized and mutilated worldwide, that homosexuality is still illegal in, 57 countries. These are the issues that we should be fighting for. So if you feel as compelled as I do to fight at global level, please support LGB International. And if you can, there is a donate button. I know it's always the same women and few men who are supporting these struggles, but yes is the answer to your question.
Thanks, Kate. It just sounds like you're taking on the work that Stonewall was meant to be doing, and could have done if it hadn't have kind of sideways into the trans agenda. And it is so important. It's ridiculous looking around the world at LGB rights, the direction that they went in.
Yeah.
And I was going to say to you about when you say about the gay men. I don't know if you've found this, but in the Green Party, the LGBTIQA plus Greens, I think at the moment their committee is made up of something like 6 young males, however they identify, and 2 women. And it seems to me that rather typically that when you have a committee, they tend to be dominated by the men. Is that what you found across the board still in the LGB world?
No, because in our world, in LGB Alliance world, the men that want to support us are horrified at what the other gay men are doing. They don't understand it either. So we make a very actually we haven't had to make rules, but we find that we are always at minimum 50-50, and sometimes there are more lesbians than gay men and bisexuals. But obviously the men who are supporting us are very, very, very strongly supporting lesbian rights as well as gay men's rights. So no, we don't. We're lucky. The men that support us are really strong and really helpful, positive role models of how gay men and lesbians can work together. It can work. It has worked. It's been an absolute pleasure for me, because my background has mainly been working in women's liberation groups, women's aid groups, women, lesbians. So LGB Alliance is, if you like, my first experience of working with everybody together, the G's and the B's, and I love it. It's brilliant.
Well, that sounds fantastic. We've not got many minutes left, so I'll just say, Jude, if you've got any more questions.
I just wanted to speak. I'm going to quickly say, Diana asked a question about the links between Stonewall and the Green Party of England and Wales, because we've been talking about Stonewall a bit. It's something that I've been very interested in trying to investigate over the years. Obviously, in the early days, 2015, we had Amy Challoner, Stonewall champion, and there was a huge amount, I think, of connection then, and the bad seeds were set. And we believe that the Green Party of England and Wales still gives money to Stonewall. Funnily enough, it's the only organisation they seem to give money to. They don't give money to any race-related policy-making organisation, any disability organisation, any women's organisation, or any actual religious organisations. If you look at all the liberation groups we've got, or even animal organisations, the only organisation they currently give money to is Stonewall. And it's something that Green Women's Declaration will be asking Harriet, the new CEO. And, you know, part of our list of asks will include no longer supporting that organisation. So just watch this space. It'll be something that we'll be trying to work on in the next few months. And of course, that's something that your donations help with: writing letters, doing research, doing the kind of policy lobbying behind the scenes that we've been trying to do. Somebody said that a motion at conference passed saying that they will widen the organisations for different diversity. Well, about time too.
I'd have another cheeky one, unless Kate wants to answer that.
No, go for it.
Okay. I thought there's probably quite a few of us that are going to applaud you for challenging Robin Moira White in the House of Commons. Do we need to be a bit braver? I'm really tired of these men saying nobody noticed me, nobody cared, all the women were fine with it. Do we all have to be a little bit braver? And secondly, do you see yourself ever ending up in the House of Lords because we need some people in there to counteract Ruth Hunt and those people who have been promoted to the House of Lords? So, you know, do you see yourself there?
Well, I fancy a damehood.
Right, well, you heard it here.
No, seriously, I think there's two parts to the question, so I'll answer the second part first, because there's nothing like a dame, quite right. You know, all these people who have destroyed children's lives, like Ruth Hunt, who is sitting in the House of Lords instead of sitting in a prison cell. I have said that over and over again in public. I will keep repeating it. I think she has incited violence for children to self-harm. And if I could find a criminal lawyer to bring charges against her and get her in court, I would do so. It infuriates me that she's been rewarded by a peerage. So I totally agree that I should, of course, be in the House of Lords. Not going to happen, but it's more probably, I mean, much more likely, younger, sensible women like Maya, Helen Joyce, Stephanie Arai Davis. These are experts in their field. They know exactly what needs to be done. They're incredibly hardworking. I think the fact that I'm, 20 years older than all of them that's just what it is. But yes, if somebody wants to make me a peer or a dame, I'm definitely open to that. And the first part of the question was, should we be braver? And yes, we need to be braver and happier. And the two go together, because what happens is, if we don't challenge, we don't say what we think, we go home and think, I wish I'd said that. Why didn't I say that? So this to me is, what I do if I'm traveling at night on the tube or something and I see a woman being hassled or something, I'll just go and stand next to her, or I'll say to her, what's the time, or where are you going? Are you? And several times, what's happened is I've managed to get the woman away from the bloke who's hassling her without being involved in a punch up. And all it is feminist solidarity, standing with your sisters, getting them some space to get away. So that's a safety thing. In terms of challenging these absolute, how dare he walk past me and it ignored me and Heather Binning saying, Robin, this is the women's loo, you cannot go in there. You know, I didn't think about it. I didn't think, should I be saying this? That's where we go wrong. We overthink it. You see a bloke going in, just say, this is the women's loo. I mean, the fact that he actually went straight past and then said, after all, he said I attacked him. It's funny. But the point is, yes, we should be braver. And I think, I'm not sure about this, I think some women criticize me for doing it. I don't know why. I don't care. I mean, it was the right thing to do. So we should all be braver, and we'll definitely be happier, because afterwards the House of Commons changed the rules. Heather and I went to see the estate manager, and there and then, they changed the rules on the basis of the Supreme Court judgment. It's a shame that a whole load of other organisations haven't changed theirs. But yes, definitely. Challenge more, be braver, speak up, never go home and think, I wish I'd done something that I didn't do.
That's really great advice. And I think you're right. I think we're going to have to take our stuff back. They're not going to give it willingly. I think a lot of people are used to women just being passive and allowing ourselves to be treated badly. And we are going to have to stand up. And people, I mean, I'm not dissing what's happened. We are fighting. But yeah, I think a lot of us applauded you for that move. Right, it is now time to wrap up. I would just remind you that you can support the Green Women's Declaration if you would like to, by either signing the declaration or joining the email list, or if you want to, you can become a supporter member. You don't have to be in the Green Party or even be kicked out of the Green Party. And obviously, if you can spare us a bit of cash to put these Zooms on, that we would be very grateful, because we are working on a shoestring as ever.
I just want to say thank you to you, Emma, as well, because I wasn't always as brave as I could be in the Green Party. And I know that sometimes people wonder about why we stay and fight, or those of us who are on the outside stay and fight. So I just want to say, when I decided to speak out and stand up, I stopped being so miserable and depressed and bullied and stuff. So it really was a good thing. And it was you that helped me to do that, Emma, because I saw you standing up and being brave on behalf of everybody. So I'm going to say thank you to you in this moment for doing that. And thank you to Kate as well, because the LGB Alliance has made a really big difference to the way that we think about things, and how it helps us all to be a bit braver. And I know not everybody can be brave, but sometimes it's just having a conversation with someone, isn't it, that maybe you've never bothered to speak to before, or just trying to talk to a member of your family. And you never know, do you? You never know when that conversation or that little word or that word of encouragement can make a difference to someone. So that's it, really. I'm going to say thanks to everybody for coming, and that we're all got to be optimistic. I'm really optimistic that in the next few years we will see shifts inside all the political organisations, and particularly inside the Green Party, which we as Green Women's Declaration particularly wish to see the planet and the state of the planet, and fighting for climate change, fighting for sustainability, and putting those things forward. Our little motto is for women and planet. Gender ideology is not part of a green set of values or beliefs. It really isn't. And once we start to examine it and have no debate inside the party, it will become apparent that the ideology is not compatible. We have respect for everybody's human rights. And of course, everybody deserves respect and to be able to live their lives as wonderfully as they want to. All of us deserve human rights. So thanks to everybody who came. And thanks to all our tech team for being brilliant behind the scenes. Thanks to you for being our speaker.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I've really, really enjoyed it.